public school system as a parent can be a complicated process, which can only be heightened when you're the parent of a special needs child.
That's right. Elaine Mellon has an inspiring story of overcoming the pitfalls of what she calls a flawed public school special ed system, and has written the book Unreal Education Beyond Report Cards. It's about the struggles and ultimately, thank goodness, the triumphs of her son, Blake. Let's talk about, hey, Elaine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Let's talk about Blake, and what was he diagnosed with?
He was originally diagnosed as just being learning disabled, and that was in 2nd grade, and as the parent, you don't really know what other questions to ask. You panic and say, oh my goodness, what is learning disabled, now what do I do? And the school district at the time set up what they thought was the appropriate plan to help him to get through school.
So he was labeled early on.
He was labeled early on.
Did he have an assistant to help him, or was he put in a special class?
Well, he was pulled out, for certain things, and, they kind of monitored it, and in 2nd grade, there was really not much you can do. He had speech for a little bit, and then they put him in, they pulled out a group of children and put him in a reading group once or twice a week for half an hour. Really wasn't much. But again, nothing seemed to be helping.
What ultimately was the problem with Blake?
He ended up being diagnosed as being dyslexic.
And when was that diagnosed?
That was halfway through 9th grade.
So it took from 2nd grade to 9th grade. Why did it take so long? Therein lies the problem. Right?
Well, therein lies the problem. A lot of the school districts across the country don't recognize dyslexia as an issue. And unfortunately, the way you teach somebody who's dyslexic to read and to compensate is different than teaching your run-of-the-mill student. And the problem with that is that you get labeled as being learning disabled when, truthfully, somebody who's dyslexic, they just learn differently.
Right, and when you think of dyslexic, we think of the letters being backwards, but it's not. But it's not necessarily that for everyone.
There's a broad spectrum. Some people have trouble with syllables, some people have trouble with sounds, sometimes it's a combination.
What was your son's
mostly with sounds. I used the example in the book. We had seen there was a license plate in the car in front of us, and the license plate said M-I-C-H-E-L. Now, to most people, they would pronounce that as Michael or Michelle.
Right.
He pronounced it as Mitchell. So it was just slightly off, but it was enough to make a difference.
And in hindsight, if you had known that in the 2nd grade, you could have had him get into some therapy for that.
Oh, we would have had a definite, total different reading program.
Right.
Yes.
So why is the public school special ed system broken down in your estimation?
Well, unfortunately, the teachers are caught between a rock and a hard place. And I can't tell you how many times that I have heard from the teachers, you didn't hear this from me, but. And they would tell me what to do and how to navigate the system, because some of it is financial, and when there's more children in special ed, it causes the district more money. But there's some things that you can do that really don't cost any more money, and for my son, they ended up spending more money because they had him come in for extra help, and they had him come in for all these special services that he didn't need. It could have been handled much differently.
So he's 21 now.
He's 21.
How's he doing?
He is doing fantastic. And the interesting thing is my favorite part of the book was when he got to college. The book covers 19 years because we didn't realize why some things weren't working until he got to college. And, in all the schools, and if you know kids that are in school and remember being in school, you have 6 or 7 teachers during the day telling you 6 or 7 different ways to organize things. Well, for somebody who's dyslexic, that's too much.
Right.
Well, we're glad that this story has a happy ending.
Very much, yes.
And we wish you and we wish your son a lot of success. Elaine Mellon, thank you again. The book, again, is called Unreal Education Beyond the
report
cards.